Howdy, y'alls. Welcome back. It's me, Dr. Edwards. This time talking about Module 7, The Rise of Complexity and Limits. So, this module, we're really kind of bringing together this cultural evolutionary perspective and a human ecological perspective. And we can really see this in the social complexity and what it takes to maintain a large population. All right. So we've been focusing on different food production strategies, right? Foraging, horticulture, pastoralism, non-intensive agriculture, intensive agriculture, and agro-industrialism. All right. Now, another key piece to this puzzle, if you would, is the role of bureaucracy. Right. This is often something that we see as negative. We describe it as red tape, jumping through hoops, putting out fires, things like that. Right. But this is really an essential piece for a large population to live together harmoniously. And don't think of harmoniously as in the birds chirping and the flowers blooming. No, not some Disney-esque harmony, if you would, but just being able to live with each other. Right? It takes. Well, put it in perspective. Look at small groups like a foraging society. Right? Everyone knows everyone. In fact, everyone is probably related to somebody in some way or some fashion in very small groups like foragers. And the key thing here is because everyone knows everything, conflict's settled. It's minimized because everyone's got to get along. I mentioned before the Dobijuhuansi. They have a really interesting leveling mechanism called insulting the meat. All right, this is a great example of how a small foraging type group might do it. Large groups, however, like an agricultural state, well, we got an enormous population, right? And we need some sort of social mechanism for all of us to be able to live and work together, right? Think of it think of bureaucracy as a third party, which is really all about minimizing conflict, right? Or to control conflict, resolve it. So yeah, we as a result, we go from kind of the cultural evolutionary perspective. We go from these foraging groups to tribes, chiefdoms, states, and there's increasing social complexity as we move along the way. Now, don't confuse social complexity for don't be ethnocentric about it. Okay, just because a group is larger and has more parts to it, okay, that's what we're talking about complexity. We're not talking about you're more worldly or anything like that. No. Just think about the various parts that make up the whole. Okay? That's kind of what we're talking about when we're talking about social complexity. And as has been outlined with states, increased social complexity has an inherent cost. Tainter really explains this really well about energy, labor, and time. These three fundamentals, they're always connected. So rise in social complexity requires more energy, more labor, more time. Okay, think of those as the additional parts which create the complexity. And if folks aren't willing to pay that cost, well, usually you find some less organized form or less complex. Now, again, I got to stress: don't think of social complexity, as one group, if they have more parts to them, as being better than another. Okay. We want to use our cultural relativism to understand that no, just because you have more parts, that doesn't make you better. All right. Enough on that. Looking at my notes here, Tainter, he really explores the example of the Roman Empire, right? And this is hint, wink, wink. This is a really productive area for this week's discussion. Do do you see similar patterns in our contemporary society? Right? Do you see differences in, maybe you see it here in the West, but not, say, in, I don't know, in Russia? Like these, we want to try to look at these patterns and see if we see them reflected in our contemporary practices. All right. One major difference that we can point out between, the Roman Empire and today is, the presence or absence of fossil fuels. We have fossil fuels; the Romans didn't. But these fossil fuels essentially allow us to pay the cost of increased social complexity. Right? We actually put in very little input from ourselves. We're using energy that was essentially created millions of years ago to pay the cost. Heinberg, he explores how current society has evolved from a sustainable type society, all right, in the post-Roman era, to an unsustainable one today, right? And he's really using a human ecological perspective, this increased energy use to greater dependence. Uh, you know, this results in an increased impact on the ecosystem and ability to sustain ourselves. Okay. Yeah, he outlines some of the well, not some, many of the poor decisions that we've made in the past 40 years or so, right, with regard to our energy policy, and it's had an impact on historical events, world events. And many of these you can see directly correlate with Tainter's predictions. Okay, so I gotta take a moment, and because I know that this can lead to some real self-defeatist thinking, right? Like, oh, we're already done for. There's no point. We're screwed. Excuse my language. But we got to look at the lessons. All right. Think of mistakes or these poor decisions, right, as means for gaining knowledge that we can apply. This is a positive way to look at it, because it's really easy just to, give up. And I don't want you all to give up, right? You will play a key role in, our energy decisions in the future. Just look at the collapse of Europe after the collapse of the Roman Empire. Right, they entered the Dark Ages, and things were were pretty dismal. But things happened. Europe went from overexploiting wood, right, cutting down all its forests, to using coal. Right now, we might argue that, yeah, well, that's just using a different energy source, and they still overexploited it. But the point is that they were able to change. All right, they went from one unsustainable strategy, all right, to one that was more sustainable at the time. Right, I'm not saying it was perfect by any means, but the point is that they could change, and that means we can change. All right, we can look at these poor decisions that we've made, all right, and take lessons from them. We already are. Alternative energy is now booming. I just read the other day, Tesla, as in Tesla Motor Company. He's invented these solar roof tiles that are stronger than your normal tiles and are highly efficient. It's incredible. Google them. You check it out. It's really cool stuff. But there's all sorts of alternative energy. We got nuclear. Not that it doesn't have some potential downfalls, but we got solar. We got wind. Even wave. Here in Oregon, at Oregon State University, OSU, there's a great project where they're developing wave energy, right, using tidal flows and waves to create electricity, and it's really cool. In fact, here in Oregon, you can actually decide what energy resources you want to pay for. All right, it's a really cool thing. Now, as should be understood, because we've had this, 250 years of reliance on fossil fuels. There are going to be some significant social, political, economic, cultural impacts with these changes in energy sources. Uh, you know, um, I'll give you an example from my work in West Africa. You know, I used to literally live in a mud hut for 3 years. No electricity, no running water, no nothing. Right? I pulled my water from a well, and just when I left, the village got electricity, uh, and everything changed literally overnight. All sorts of new social dynamics started to happen. There was a whole new thing that people had to do. They had to pay for electricity if you want it. It doesn't come free, and so people. Lots of folks started creating little boutiques, little stalls that they sold, tea and cigarettes from. Yeah, it was really incredible. I saw that for about 6 months, but it was really a stark contrast from the previous 2.5 years that I had spent there without any of those things. And then all of a sudden, boom, they're happening. I'm not trying to say that there weren't little stalls and vendors, but they increased because people wanted to use this new resource, and that had specific economic, political, social, and cultural impacts. All right, we can see them in our own lives. Right, you can see. There's an ongoing, TV commercials, advertisements for like the fossil fuels industry. There's one that I see fairly regularly about how oil, makes art, oil makes technology, oil this, oil that, and this is the oil industry, the industrial complex trying to hold on to these things, these past practices which have a high cost. So, yeah, try to look at the positive. Try to see where you can draw a lesson from a past mistake, from a past poor choice. So, and that incidentally is some good material for this week's discussion, which I'll be checking out. I'll see you then, and have a good one. Take care. Bye.